I'm Izzy Notion, and with me, of course, are the common people. Lady Pitface and Lord Baines.
Wait, are we common people or are we lords and ladies?
Well, common compared to me, I'm the Emperor.
Oh, okay.
Hello, people, and welcome to the Drunk Duck QUACKCAST. This is QUACKCAST number 430. Oh my god, we're another round number. No longer are we 28, 29, 26. We're 30. So, I have the lovely Lady Pitface. Hello, Lady Pitface.
Hello. It's an ozone ocean.
And we have the Lord Baines. Hello, Lord Baines.
Hello?
So we're talking about beginnings and endings this week, which is an interesting topic. It was brought to our attention by the fabulous M. Claire, who does the lovely comics Constellation Chronicles. That's the one I always think about from M, because I like that one. So she was talking about how to do a good beginning. Because beginnings are what grab you in a story. That is what keeps you and grabs you. They're very important. And if you don't have a good beginning, well, then you don't have a reader. Basically, that's what happens. Not all the time. Sometimes we start a comic reading it from the latest pages, and then we'll read back, and then we'll think, oh, God, this is so good. I'll have to read it from the beginning. So sometimes that is what grabs us. But traditionally, it's the beginning. That's the thing you've got to really work on. But before we get into that, the featured comic. So Quai brings us the feature this week, and her feature was Quasi and Pseudo. So take it away, Quai, with Quasi and Pseudo.
Hello, this is QUACKCAST, and the feature I have selected for this week is Quasi and Pseudo by Ferd Second Thirst. And it is rated E for everyone. Quasi and Pseudo are good friends, but that does not take away all the nervous energy of pacing around the room when sending multiple texts to each other, or the hours spent getting ready to see each other. When they get together, they do magic and signs tricks, which would be safer if their winged rabbit and odd chicken did not eat the fireball flowers, Bernice and Combustifer. Quasi and Pseudo have such a great friendship that they have all-nighters and wake up late for work the next day, but it does not prevent any future panic attacks. The art is drawn with yellow-orange ombre backgrounds and black line art. The creator, Ferd Second Thirst, is also the mastermind behind the black and white comic Clint that was featured in 2015. Quasi and Pseudo is drawn in a very different style, but still has much of the brilliant qualities from the previous comic. Experience a fun friendship riddled with insecurities and read Quasi and Pseudo by Ferd Second Thirst, rated E.
And that was Quai's feature, Quasi and Pseudo. All right, so after that we have the music by Gum Wallace. Gum Wallace has given us the theme to, oh my god, Gum Wallace. He's given us a theme to Quasi and Pseudo. So the feature
that worked out.
is the same as the music. Yeah, what a coincidence. Somehow I don't think it was a coincidence. All right. Waves of contemplative strings, like huge feathered fans slowly wafting in air, thick with importance and potential at an imperial court. The musical atmosphere is rich and heavy. A cheeky clarinet takes up the theme of the deep bass cello, performing a twirling pirouette before sinking away and ceding to the cello once more. Spikes of harp strings glint with gold reflected from the richly decorated furnishings. So, take it away, Gumlas, with Quasi and Pseudo.
Oh my god.
There you go. Cheeky clarinet.
And that was our theme. Thank you for that, Gumwallace. Quasi and Pseudo. All right. Beginnings and endings. So, M has given us this topic, and she has provided us with a picture of Mob Psycho 100 or 1000, whatever that is. Which
100.
100. Right. I don't really get the references to beginning. So maybe that is the beginning of the manga or webcomic or whatever that was. I'm not sure. But
Okay, I wondered what that had to do with it too. Yeah, it's kind of an interesting image.
she just pulled that one out of her bum. Yeah. Maybe that will intrigue you enough to read the news post. I'm not sure. But so she's sort of talking about all the techniques for doing a good beginning. What do you think about that those techniques she suggests?
I think it's pretty much like right on. Like,
Do you want to
absolutely.
read what the techniques are? Because our listeners might not know.
Sure.
Well, so she says, like, oh, you've got an amazing idea down for your story. How do you begin? You want to make your first chapter amazing. This is where you need to lay down concrete foundations to get your audience, main character, and why they care about what is happening to them. So here are a few tips you can use to get the ball rolling down the right hill. So the first one, she says, is start at the beginning. Oh my god, that's a unique kind of thing. But yeah, that's a good kind of way to do it. Although this is a bit of noi doi. I think she means no
No doy.
Yeah, no doy.
Noi doi.
No duh.
This is a bit of a noi-doi statement. This is often the hardest part of putting together a story. Besides the ending is the hardest. You want to make the best case as to why the audience should care about your story. A neat way to do this is to start with the protagonist in action. It doesn't have to be an intense action sequence. Rather, the main character should be heading somewhere to do something. We are dropping in on them just as they are about to begin. So think of where they might be going and how is it getting them to the problem they will encounter later in the chapter. Yeah, that's a good way of doing it. What do you guys reckon about that kind of action dropping into your character's life, heading off to do something? I think that's a pretty...
I like it. That's how I started off the Epic of Blitzov, as I just threw him off a mountain. But I think that's kind of effective in getting people interested in, what's going on and stuff. I really like that approach. We touched on this a little bit in our stunning Patreon video, which you can watch if you become a patron. I'm sure Oz will put up all the stuff for that. But yeah, feed our hungry mouths, please. Actually, it all goes back to the website, I'm pretty sure, doesn't it?
Yes, it goes into funding and paying for the hosting and the images and the QUACKCAST. It all costs money. $20 a month for our QUACKCAST hosting.
Yes.
$50 a month for hosting the web and $50 for our images. So yeah, there we are. We need every cent. It counts. That's a good point. And yeah, you get to watch us in all our glory, me as a fop, Babe's in his hairiness, and Pitt in her loveliness, tank top Sarah Connor-ness. So yeah, there we are. All
tank top is optional.
Us in all our glory. Yeah, we did have a bit of a chat about it, but yeah, beginnings. I think Pinky TA starts the same way. She's sort of on her way to do stuff in a helicopter. That's the real start of Pinky TA. So yeah, that wasn't really designed as a clever way of doing it. I just thought, what kind of way is interesting to me? How about yeah, that's normally the way as a noob you sort of start out. You think?
Well, yeah, because if it's interesting to you, it'll probably be interesting to other people too. It's just I think our point that we were talking about in the Patreon video, which I was trying to loop it back to, was we were kind of making the point that the beginning is important, of course, in order to create interest, but that doesn't mean beating your reader over the head with your scrolling text, which describes
Info
everything
dump.
that's going on in the story, or info dumping and all that kind of stuff. Just it's so effective just to kind of start in the middle of something that's interesting, or Baines kind of hit it on the head, and I think Emma just did in her news post too. Make it around a character. What's this character doing? And that, will foster interest.
It humanizes the story. That's on the other side of that. You don't want to confuse people too much. So info dumps are a pain. They're basically a slog to get through. They're boring. But you can have that in the form of a character talking to another character or educating another character about the world. Like a lot of things start like out in a school or something like that, or with a young character being mentored by an older character, and they're sort of telling them about the world. So you can introduce it in novel ways that are not an info dump. But yeah, on the other side of that, sometimes you can dump people into the middle of action that's happening, and it can be really fucking confusing. You think, oh, so who did this person kill beforehand? And, why should I care about this character? Why? So you've got to give people enough information on, in the early part of it, that we care about the characters. Or that we even, pay attention, that we want to see what's going to happen to them next. So yeah, there's a bit of a balancing act, I think.
I mean, having questions is better than having too many answers in the beginning. Like, I mean, you guys just covered it well. Like, the info dump thing is pretty much rule number one of what not to do. Like, to have to explain the whole history of your world, or the whole mechanics of your magic, or the whole whatever your story is about. Like, to have all of that right up front is a mistake. You have to space that stuff out and fill it in later, bit by bit, when people do already care about your character. But if you start with a murder, or even a murder that just happened, and a character who now has to dispose of a body, that's good. That's a really good way to start.
Well, that's an identifiable
in principle,
situation.
not that there's a murder in every story, of course, but
if you have an identifiable kind of thing happening, so we know what a murder is. We know, the getting rid of body. This relates to what Tant said in her latest news post about cliches. Cliches can be bad, but they exist for a reason, because they're like a little compressed bit of information that we all know what it means. So it's a shortcut to having someone identify with a story. So using a murder, or meeting a blind date, something like that. We all know about these situations, so that's the way of humanizing stuff and getting us interested. Because, so what is this woman going to look like? How are these people going to, are they going to hit it off? Or if it's murder, who is murdered? Who did it? How is the person going to hide the body? How are they going to avoid the police?
It's even how's the person going to hide the body might even be, that's what you worry about to begin with, like a character with a problem.
Yeah.
You don't have to know who the murdered person is or answer any of these questions. You don't have to be in a big rush to do that. Because that's what the hook is,
Absolutely. As you're talking about using the murder example, one of my favorite character kind of expositions is in American Psycho, and I mean the movie. I've never read the book, but where Patrick Bateman, I'm sure it's pretty much towards the beginning, I think. If it's not the beginning itself, it's been a while since I've seen it. But you have that simple scene where it's just him in front of the mirror, and it's his inner thoughts, and he has the facial mask on, and he's kind of talking about himself, like how he just doesn't connect to other people and stuff. And he peels off the mask as he says, "I'm just not here." And I think that's a great way to introduce him, because we didn't need to know why he became a killer in the first place. Was there some event that triggered it or anything like that? We got to know this character as well as we needed to know him to follow him through this story and watch and see what he does as a serial killer. You know, we didn't need to know everything. We just got a taste of what he was. And it was in such a simple, concise way. I love it, man. I absolutely love it. And it makes you want to follow him through the story and be like, all right, well, what's up with this guy?
What's this guy's deal? Yeah, exactly.
I was just thinking about that. I haven't read it or seen the movie, but that is interesting in that for a character like that, he's a businessman, right? Like he's
80s businessman.
Yeah. So again, you've got cliches that you can use in order to like have compressed info dumps without having like an info dump text. They're just clues as to what the character is in the world he's in. Just showing him in a suit. So that's one thing. Showing his incredibly neat hair and his attention to, him combing his hair, something like that. Then you can learn a whole lot about a character just from something like that. Oh, that's a really weird thing to be concerned about. Or I think like the most famous thing about that character, one of the most famous scenes, is the business card stuff. So he's focusing massively on the business card and the typeface and the card stock and all this, and comparing it, and immediately you're thinking, oh, that tells me a hell of a lot about this character.
Well, it tells you about the character, but it also tells you about the tone of the movie. And granted, that's not super in the beginning either, but it's still early enough to make an impact on you. So when you have a beginning that has scenes like that, it not only sets the tone for the character, it sets the tone of the story itself. And, it's great to start off with things like that. And like you said, with the cliches as well, cliches are, we're also too quick to damn them just because they are cliches, but they can be good if used in the correct way of just establishing things. I think what ruins cliches is when you use them in a way that the cliche itself is supposed to get a reaction just because it's a cliche, and here's a pie. Here's a guy. We're going to put the pie in the guy's face. You've seen it a million times. It's funny. Nobody does that anymore. And, it wouldn't anger me if I saw it. But that's what a cliche kind of functions as when it goes wrong, is something that, it's supposed to stand on its own when it's supposed to help you understand things more. So you can use those absolutely in the beginning of your story to help establish things. Just make sure you are dressing it up so it's not just the cliche that's establishing things.
Yeah, you've got to know how to use it.
If you get specific, it's like it's not a cliche anymore, right? Like if you kind of get into like who this character actually is, but like you said, being the business guy and all that's how you kind of get away from cliche, I guess.
I think trope or character archetype, I think those are better descriptions rather than cliche. Cliche is like a badly used trope or archetype when they're overused or something. But those kind of things, when used right and they fit in the world they're meant to be in, and like you say, they're not just put in there because they are cliches and just rammed in there like a joke in Meet the Spartans or something. Then it's a problem. But that can really help you get into the world. They're damn useful. I was trying to think of one thing that is interesting that I've sort of learned about is in anime, right? What they do there is often the first episode will not grab you, and they try and make it out so you're meant to watch at least 2 or maybe 3 episodes before you can get properly grabbed. That's why often the first episode isn't designed in a clever way to grab you. It's because they think they're able to do that by the 3rd episode. So they space out the intro a bit more. And I don't know if they do that in the manga as well, but they probably do because those things are directly related to each other. So I don't know if that's a good way to go because for me, when I'm getting into something, I don't have that much time and patience to go through a whole bunch of stuff before I can finally get used to it.
Yeah, I think some cases it may work and it may not work. It depends on what they give you in the span of that intro. And it can really drag sometimes. You're absolutely right. The other, like the reverse example I have of it is, so I watched the full first season of the new She-Ra cartoon when it came out. And I was kind of annoyed by it because they compressed too much in the first couple episodes. And it really kind of kneecapped the character who would become She-Ra. Because she had to go through so many changes to get to the point where she wanted to join the create a rebellion, or at least turn against, I forgot what they're called, the bad guys that she's with and stuff like that. And they just kind of, is it? Okay. And they just kind of make these things happen and go through the motions, knowing that as an audience, you expect her to turn. Yeah, we all know what she's going to end up doing, but it just left the whole thing kind of hollow because it's like they were going through acts in a sense. Like, okay, now this is supposed to happen. Now this is supposed to happen. And there wasn't anything in between with the character to show her going through these changes internally, really. It just kind of, and it just kind of pissed me off. I want, especially when you have something like on Netflix now, which you get larger spaces to tell a narrative like that. They'll give like a whole first season to something, to exploring somebody's character. And I love when they do that. I think they should have done that with She-Ra. I think they should have had at least half the first season maybe dedicated to her turning against those guys, because that would have been so much more interesting rather than doing it in the first 2 episodes. Like, okay,
Yeah. This is She-Ra. She has to, have a little rebellion, and that's when it's like going through the motions or rote kind of stuff. You're right. Then it doesn't allow enough character development to make you really care about things. Then it sort of falls flat. That's what I worried about. If I'm sure you've watched like Full Metal Alchemist, and when they did the first version, just Full Metal Alchemist, and then they did like a reboot of the whole thing 2-3 years later, and the first few episodes, maybe the first 10 episodes, like cover the same ground because it's all based on the same anime. And then you think, oh, how are they going to handle it? Because it's the same characters, the same, everything is the same, and they're going through the same story. Are they just going to do a total repeat of everything that happens? And you're worried that they're just going to rush over it, and just go through rote. Oh, here's where, they have the big accident where one turns into metal and, whatever. And then there's the whole thing where, he just discovers, this guy turns his daughter into a monster and all this, and that's like a really sad episode, but we've already seen it before, so why were we going to care about it the second time? And that's a huge worry when you watch it all happen again. And they do sort of rush over some spots, but I think in there they did manage to handle it well. But that is a really tricky thing when you're doing a reboot, like in an origin story, when you're doing, I don't know, Spider-Man's been done how many times in the last few years? 6, 7, 800 times they've done the Spider-Man origin story. Do you watch that and think, oh yeah, here's where he gets bitten by the spider, here's where Aunt May, and here's where Uncle Ben dies, or whatever.
Yeah.
Or, I don't know. It's really weird in those kind of stories. I think, though, say with She-Ra, you didn't have to be, sucked in by a really good beginning because you already knew the character from, I don't know, the 80s version. And
That's what they're depending on. Yeah.
Yeah, you wanted to see what they're going to do with it now. And they also... Oh, sorry. I don't mean to...
No. I almost interrupted you. I keep going.
Well, and they also have the whole, like, it looks like Steven Universe. So they're using that as an artistic technique in order to get you interested in, because, oh, this is what animation looks like now. So we have this funky look. And that's another thing to help you get into it. So they've got all those kind of things, and they don't have to rely so much on a good story to get you in. Maybe that's a thing.
I think that is pretty much the thing. It just, of course, it's just still... It goes without saying that it just still bothers me that when somebody, rushes over a good opportunity for character exposition.
Yeah. I mean, you do need good character. I've had so many webcomics that I've been reading through for a feature, and they've had fantastic art, and I've gone, oh my god, this is going to be so cool. And I've read, 5-6 pages into the story, maybe 30 pages, and I thought, I can't feature this because the story is no good. And I can't do that to people. So you do need something more than just good artwork.
It almost makes you feel worse, I think, when you do see something that has good artwork, like She-Ra, good, it had some good animation and stuff. That fell a little under par than what I was expecting too. During the fight scenes lacked impact, but I think they should have brought in a different studio to do the fight scenes. But anyway, it's a beautiful looking cartoon, and when you have a cartoon, comic, or anything like that has the window dressings to be beautiful, it makes it hurt worse when it fails, and it's beginning and it's set up and it's character execution and stuff like that. And it makes those things hurt worse because it had potential.
Yep.
Exactly. It's weird though, because you see stuff that looks bad but has fantastic story and it's really engaging, and I don't know, that is just as engaging as ever. So you really don't need good art. I don't think it's that common that you will have something with fantastic story and fantastic art and everything being fantastic.
Yeah.
It's just we get more disappointed about it when it has got really good art.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you're being pulled in by that, and you're like, I want to be into this.
Yeah.
But it needs to give you something, sort of someone to root for, who is going after something you understand and who has problems you can understand.
Can relate to or understand. Yeah, you don't need to relate to something in order to get into it, but you need to have some kind of way into it. So empathize with the character in some way. Even if you hate the characters, like in the British version of The Office, where every single character... Well, Tim, in the beginning, you identify with him. But as it goes on, you learn to despise all the characters, I think. But it's still compelling for some reason.
But you can understand the thing of... and relate to also the thing of being...
In a terrible office,
job, and hating your boss, or at least being frustrated, annoyed by your boss, and being in love with someone, and all that stuff. It's all very human. It's very
exactly.
It's all there, Yeah,
it's a relatable situation, so you don't have to love the characters in order to be engrossed and be following a story.
Right.
But still, even so, you don't love those characters. They're still understandable. They're still people who, you can sort of empathize with, and you can sort of get a handle on. So I think character is one of the most important parts of getting you into a story and keeping you there.
Yeah. Actually, in M's, after she says start at the beginning, she said her next piece of advice there is spend the first chapter or episode with the main protagonist. So whoever you're focusing... Did we already cover this? I might have missed it. Sorry.
We sort of skipped over, but that's weird because in Constellation Chronicles, one of the first, big webcomics I read of hers, you spend it with side characters or characters that never appear again.
Right.
I think.
And they're sort of explaining the world to you a little bit, or
Yeah.
sort of expressing the world.
Yeah.
Well, think of like detective shows, or like X-Files or something like that. The structure of those is always like you see the crime or the event or some kind of hint of the monster or whatever phenomenon. That you see that's your teaser. That's your first scene, right? You see the victim of the crime or the phenomenon at work, and then after that you go to your heroes.
Yeah.
So it's not hard and fast, but it's something to think about. Like especially if you have an ensemble cast and you want people to understand who their point of view character is, or who they're rooting for, or who they're with. It's a good idea to think about focusing on that main character, unless you're doing like expressing the problem first, or these aren't rules necessarily, but
no.
it can help to not have people be confused.
Well, she's offered a lot of different alternatives of doing it, and like you said, like a murder. So if you got someone hiding a body, that could be like the murderer doing that, and later on, it's all about trying to find who that murderer was. Say something like in a Columbo story, it's always done by seeing exactly what the bad guy is doing, the murderer, and seeing how he does it. Well, not exactly how he does it, but you're seeing the murderer first, and then Columbo comes in later on in the story to tell everyone how it's done. Well, like you were talking about, like with the X-Files thing as well. But yeah, there's a lot of different ways of doing it. Her next point about the snapshot of the protagonist's normal life, I really love that one. I think you made a comment about that as well, didn't you?
On the thread?
Yeah.
Like sort of to understand what this person's all about. In your first scene, I would say it's not in an info dump kind of way, like we talked about on the Patreon video. Yeah. Like sort of showing everything mundane in the character's life. Get out of bed, they brush their teeth. Oh yeah, that's the comment I made down below actually too. Yeah. Or just the boring stuff in their life. I do think there should be some kind of, and Em goes on to say this actually in her next point anyway. But like show kind of who your person is before the story really takes off. Whether this is one in a series or more if it's like this is a single story, you're just meeting this person to sort of show them as they are.
Yeah. Well, I love that because it introduces the world as well and how the world normally works. So say if it's like a cop show, again, that example, you're showing, this is this person's normal day. They'll arrest this guy. They'll have a whole bunch of things they'll have to follow up on and blah, blah, blah. And then things go weird, And that's one of those normal, hero's journey kind of things. You normally meant to start it out that way. You show how things normally are before they go strange.
Well said. This is the beginning of the character arc to the world as it is, the character as they are. This makes me think of Iron Man, the original movie Iron Man, right away, where the first scene is like him, rich guy, sitting in an army vehicle with soldiers, but he's like wearing a suit and holding like a whiskey.
Exactly.
He's sitting there and he's like kind of like starts flirting with the female soldier and stuff like that. So you're okay. That's who this guy is. All right, and then there's a problem right away, which will be our next point. From Emma, but you do get to see before the problem hits in that couple of minutes. You do see, okay, I see what this guy is. He's kind of glib, very glib, very kind of he's famous, he's rich.
Yeah, you have those little hints of all the things that makes him him. He wears a suit, but he's not like incredibly buttoned up like a real estate agent, something like that. He's a relaxed,
he's a flashy kind of guy. Yeah.
Goatee, fancy sunglasses. Yeah, obviously he's rich enough to be, to do his own thing, even though he's in the back of a military vehicle. So he's,
Right.
A lot of things like that. Yeah, that's a good way of doing it. All right, so next up she mentions
Start with the problem.
Start with the problem.
What's going wrong in the character's life? Why should we care? Why should they care? And she says, once we've seen a snippet of the character's daily life, move towards the major problem that will kickstart the events to come. This will keep readers wanting to know what's happening next. Maybe the character misses the bus, only to see it swerve, fall off an embankment, only to be saved by a powerful yet scary psychic, who then notices them, and now they are being chased by them. Oh, damn. Presenting the problem is different from the inciting incident, the event that causes the MC to take action. But by putting forth the initial problem, you're hooking your readers in with a reason to care.
Yeah. And that can work. As long as you've established the character enough, that can work. If you have not made the audience like the character enough or empathize with them, then jumping to the problem too fast can knock your interest away, I find. I've had many examples of that when people sort of jump past the, giving us the snapshot of the normal life or giving us a character that's interesting and then just jumped too fast into the problem. And that's alienating because they're relying on the cliches, of a big problem and someone having to be saved and, all that kind of stuff, which
right.
is not automatically something you're interested in because you've seen it too many times. So why
that's
am I
also
interested in it this time?
Like when you talk about, like when you talk about the problem, like the big story issue that they're going to be dealing with, that is something that for later. That's kind of one of the tough things about beginnings, to give characters a problem that they're trying to get past or an obstacle to overcome, but it's not the big obstacle, but it feels like it's setting you up for that.
Yeah, there are
the
some
tone of
problems.
it and stuff.
There's a big variation, so maybe you're late for work. Oh, damn, I'm late again. How could I? Oh, God, I'm going to get fired if I don't get this report in on time. I've been late for the past 3 weeks, and my boss warned me. And so immediately you've got a problem there that's relatable. It's cliche, but it's relatable, and it's personal to that character. So it's not just, a bus swerving or whatever, or being something like that, hit by a car or whatever. This is like relatable, personal to the character. It means something to them in a way you could understand it meaning something to you.
Yeah, like if I'm late again, I'm going to be fired, and I'm going to, and my elderly mother's going to be out on the street with me, or something. It's like there's something like it matters, or I'm going to be homeless. Like I'm really hanging on by a thread. Now I'm late again. Like it's stuff like that, like a problem that matters.
Yeah.
But it's not necessarily. But it's not. Forget necessarily. It's not the big story problem.
No. It's something to introduce you into caring about the character.
Tony Stark, the military vehicle he's in, gets attacked, by soldiers. And like the soldiers run out, they're like, "Stay here," and they go out, and it's a big mess, and like they're shot. Tony Stark tries to get out, and he gets hit by shrapnel and falls back, and this big pool of blood starts forming on his chest, and that's your beginning. It's like boom, and then
literally,
literally, yeah. After that, they do a flashback to 2 weeks earlier, or 2 days earlier, or whatever, where he's,
right. Yeah.
He's in a casino, and then you see him more in his element. But that was like brilliantly structured to do that, like to have that little flash forward in the beginning, and then move back to see him get a little more of a sketch of his character and his world and some of the other supporting characters and stuff.
Very well directed by John Favreau, I think.
Yeah, brilliantly done.
Clever fellow. Also a good actor. Yeah.
Yes.
That was a very good start to that particular thing. One of the first of the new generation of Marvel films as well.
And kind of like a classic character arc, in that movie. We always talk about Star Wars, but Iron Man does it too. It does kind of that sort of, what would be the word? That sort of heroic journey or that heroic arc,
Exactly, the classic hero's journey. I should watch it again.
Great movie.
I should definitely watch it again. Yeah, that's that is a really well done, really great example. Although, but movies and comics and stuff like that, yeah, we're talking. We're not saying you have to follow all these kind of rules in order to do that. M's offering different alternatives to do this. So
right,
there's all different ways of getting you into the thing. But yeah,
you have Bill Murray in Scrooge, who's sorry if you're about to go into.
No, go on.
Okay, who has this problem? He's this rich executive. He sort of is satisfied with himself on one level, although he lives a pretty cold and isolated kind of life. He's got pressure. He's got doing this big live TV program or something like that. So he's got a problem to begin with. It's not just him with no conflict, or no issues. He's got a problem.
Yeah.
Something he can probably handle, but there's pressure and there's, he's dealing, I think it's been a while, but the first scene is like him looking at these promos that the executives have come up with that are corny and he hates.
I don't remember much from that except they had the solid gold dancers
the weird pull
showing
that
their
movie.
nipples.
Yeah, no, right. Yeah. I don't know why I go to that movie. But I'm just thinking of like stories that start with a problem. Most of them do, because that's kind of the way you do it. If you want people to be engaged by things, it's yeah. Anyway, we've talked about this.
Yeah, problems are good intros, or slight problems. Like you say, not the big one. But I keep mentioning, like, the bad side of it is don't dump people too fast into things, or don't make the problem too big.
Usually not. Yeah.
The purpose of the problem is to make you care about what the character cares about.
So it's got to be kind of small in a way, or at least somewhat, like kind of, it's got to be specific.
Or understandable.
And understandable,
well.
Yeah.
So
a problem too will help. Maybe you guys already said this because I had to get up for a second, but a problem too will also help in character development, because you see, it's not just a matter then of whatever characters you're showing, whether the main ones or not, dealing with the problem. It's not a matter of them then just kind of being in their neutral state. You see them react to something, and then you get an idea of what their character is in general due to that reaction.
Yeah.
Testing the character, pretty much.
Yeah.
Giving them
but it's testing them before they've experienced the story that they're about to experience, right? It's like, Absolutely. Where are they at now? It's like kind of, how do they handle stuff? That shows you a character way more than obviously a character just in the shower or something.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And it's great
totally.
Because it primes you, because you want to know more questions about that character then, which is great for the main problem to start, like you were saying. Well, if this character reacts this way to this problem, how are they going to react when this big one comes up? And that's a great way to go about things.
Yeah,
you probably said that entire
no.
so I apologize.
No, you're fleshing it out.
This
makes me think of Psycho, because we mentioned showers. I'm sorry, man.
No, go on.
But she's the main character in Psycho. Who we think is the main character is dealing with this problem. She's got this guy she's in love with. He's in love with her, but he's married and he's trying to get a divorce or something. And there's a money issue. He's broke, and it's like that's how you start. It's not just her happily at work, and it's not her in the shower getting stabbed in the first scene either. It's like,
she's on the run. She's trying to get out, and I forget why she's driving, but she's getting away from the place that she was. I think
she steals a bunch of money from work.
Yeah.
It's less investment money or something that she's supposed to deposit into the bank. And she's like, oh, I can help my guy get himself free so we can be together. So she steals the money kind of on impulse and takes off. Yeah. So
that's such a great setup because, the real danger ends up coming from elsewhere. And it just makes that other problem seem so minuscule all of a sudden, and there's
exactly.
You're like, oh shit,
Very Hitchcocky, blindsides you and gives you an unexpected thing.
Yeah.
Classic fellow. I was thinking of one of the other clever things I've seen in a lot of anime. They do this. They give the problem they give you in the first in the intro is like a preview of the bigger problem happening that's going to happen in later on in the story. Like it's a mini version. So these characters spend their time battling monsters, or like there's a big monster they're going to battle. And in the very first episode, they already battle some big monster and have to get through this. Like there's I don't know. Recently I saw this one called Double Decker, and in the very first episode, some guy's a policeman. He wants to be a hero, and he finds himself in a hostage situation just by accident. And there's like this guy is threatening to shoot all these hostages, and there he is, right he just finds himself right in the middle of the hostage situation. He has to help these experts at defeating hostage situations, and he manages to and they manage to get rid of like the terrorist or whatever. But that's in the very first episode, so that's like a real like mini snapshot of what's going to happen in the border thing, which can really help you get in. Oh my god, they're in the world and this is what they're going to do. This is fantastic. So you can like amp everything up to like 11 in this very first episode by doing that, and then you can do a slow build for the rest of it, because you already know the kind of thing that the character is capable of and the world is capable of.
Yeah.
Well, as soon as you said that, Goblin Slayer popped in my head right away. That's exactly what they do in the very first episode. He shows up and that party goes in, and there's goblins. They go after the goblins come after them and fucks their shit up. Excuse me. And and then what happens in the next episodes after that? Goblin Slayer meets up with that one chick, the one who survived, and they begin to make a party so they can go and do that same thing over again and fight goblins, Yeah,
that's an interesting one, because in that first episode, that is like, it hits you with a sledgehammer, that one.
Yeah.
And that's one that it divides audiences, and a lot of them aren't going to come back after the episode because it's so heavy. So yeah, that's
well, also because the way of the way it just, I won't get into it. It's divisive and
a problematic scene.
Yeah, that's a little bit more exploitive perhaps than intended, but
for me, personally, I didn't find that exploitive at all. That just like would turn me off, because I found that awful, and I wasn't going to come back after that, because I thought, God, that's awful and bad, and I don't want to see this.
Well, compared to the tones that it had later on with a couple other scenes,
it was exploitive. It
seemed to me that it was a bit exploitive to me. But anyway, that's not what this is about. And we will, and everybody has. That's exactly why it's devices, because everybody has their different reaction to it. So, but
that's a good example of like a beginning that takes a particular tack. And the only thing that kept me going with that is not revenge. Like, I think for some people it could have been like, oh, like you're gonna see like revenge, or how the characters are gonna deal with it, how they're gonna bounce back. Like for me, what kept me going is like, oh, this is like a version of Dungeons and Dragons, this world.
It is.
And I want to see more of the world. Like,
I liked that quite a lot. That's what sparked my interest in it as well, because it was almost saying like, I think it is a Dungeons and Dragons game because how it always starts off is with the throw of the dice and stuff, and it's the exposition of the world is almost literally it's a Dungeons and Dragons game, and I love that about it because and that's something established once again in the beginning of this. It's established in the credits at the beginning of the series, even, you know, and I love that for the series so much because once that's established, you realize it's like when you're playing these characters, this is their world. And to you, although it doesn't hurt when you get hit, you know, or anything like that, these characters, if they exist to you in any way, this is what their world is like. It sucks doing this. They go in, you know, with, you know, in thinking that they're going to come out victorious and stuff. But in the end, they're getting raped by goblins and torn apart. And, you know, it's heavy stuff, you know, and then, you know, this character that's been around for so long gets, you know, damaged for, or, you know, some trauma over it. And it perpetuates. And I just thought it was a really interesting way to go around about this kind of isekai setting a little bit.
Yeah, it gave it a real gritty reality to what these characters are facing. Normally, fantasy things are a lot more light and airy-fairy, and the plot armor is going to protect them. And in this one, the plot armor is really, really thin, and the characters can get damaged very easily, that is established very well in the first episode, and that sets the tone somewhat. I mean, it does bounce up from that. The first episode is a lot darker than anything else in the whole series, I think. It gets lighter after that, I think.
It does, but you're aware of the depths that it could go. Yeah. And when something does that, it's really, it makes me also think of the new Castlevania cartoon that came out. It's not super new anymore, but new, compared to the game at least. And I like the way that it sets itself up because it spends so much time. It does what I suggested earlier that She-Ra should have done. Is it spends almost the half part of the first season just establishing how nasty these demon hordes could be and stuff. And so later on, we don't see them so much anymore. Just the mention of them makes you uptight. It makes you kind of dread a bit because it's been really established what these things are and how bad they can get.
Yeah. Which, that's
like what's at stake to lose? Kind of like what happens if you lose? Like,
yeah.
Exactly, which you can do a lot more effectively in that kind of way by showing rather than giving an info dump about it.
Absolutely, 100%. If you're going to have something that is so that you want to be so very emotionally triggering, you have to show it, or you have to show the aftermath of it, but you have to show how it affects things. You cannot info dump it.
Yeah. Exactly. If you want those emotional reactions, you're going to have to do something that elicits that in your viewer, in your audience. Well, I think we're sort of just over the hour now, and we haven't got to endings, so maybe we'll do that another time. This has been really, really cool. Thank you, guys. This has been fantastic. I like talking about the intricacies of beginnings because it's so important.
That's cool. I love it too.
And thank you, Em, for giving us the news post.
Yes, thank you, Em. Did we go into her last point? Calm down and enjoy the craft.
Oh, we can briefly touch on that.
It's a good point, I think. At the end of the day, she says, you have to enjoy your story and your craft. Webcomics rely on a lot of passion to do them, so remember that at the end of the day, you can have fun with it. When you have fun, then the audience will.
And that goes into like what we said in the very beginning of this, is that like when I was doing my Pinky TA and Pip was doing like Blitzov, well, for Pinky TA, I didn't craft the beginning to be a certain way. I just did what I would think that I would like to see. So I just had fun with it. And that was the kind of thing that interested me about a beginning. I didn't really think about it too much. So, yeah. Don't.
And when you're figuring out your problems for your characters, like problems that mean something to you, even if it's in a metaphorical way, or if you end up changing the details of it in the story, like if it's stuff that means something to you or impacts you, that's the stuff to go with, right? Because that's going to come through.
Yeah.
Yeah, hopefully.
That passion that I was talking about. Yeah.
Strike
cool
a
stuff.
chord. And if it's not something that you enjoy, then yeah, like Pitt said, it's not going to be something that you enjoy, you're into. Why are you doing it?
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll talk next week about, I don't know, maybe endings. We'll see.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.